Veterans and active military members of the United States, how do you feel about the current state of the country? Story 1. I flew an American flag outside my house every day since I retired from the Navy. Took it down in 2018. Not because I stopped loving my country, but because some people started treating it like a gang symbol. You wave a flag now, and suddenly you're part of a club I never signed up for. My neighbor, who I know never served, saw me taking it down and said, "Why do you hate America?" I told him, "I don't. I just don't recognize it anymore." He gave me a blank stare like I just explained quantum physics in Latin. That's where we're at. Story 2. Hit the gym the other day, needed to sweat out some frustration, so I headed to the sauna. Big mistake. Within minutes, half a dozen vets were in there blaming Obama, Biden, and woke politics for, get this, a plane crash. One guy straight up said, "DEI is making pilots forget how to fly." I thought I was dehydrated and hallucinating. I spoke up, "You do realize the pilot was a white dude, right?" Silence. Steam. Then one muttered, "Still probably a woke guy." That was my cue to leave before I boiled alive in stupidity. Story 3. You ever meet those guys who say, "I was gonna enlist, but," followed by some excuse like a knee injury or a vague family thing? I get it. Not everyone joins. No shame in that. But these dudes act like they almost being in gives them veteran status. One guy told me, "I would have been a damn good soldier." I asked, "Then why didn't you?" He mumbled something about political reasons. Bro, you didn't join because Call of Duty has a pause button and real life doesn't. Just admit it. Story 4. I was sitting in a diner when the old-timers at the next table started talking about RFK Jr. shutting down rural hospitals. One guy said, "Well, maybe AI nurses ain't a bad idea." Another chimed in, "Hell, I don't trust doctors anyway." I couldn't help myself. "So, you'd rather bleed out in a cornfield than let a human fix you up?" They laughed. I wasn't joking. These are the same people who think a billionaire who takes government money to send rockets into space is a hero, but a nurse asking for a livable wage is a socialist. Make it make sense. Story 5. A guy in a bar started talking about how the military is full of real patriots and how we'd totally back a certain orange-faced politician. I just laughed. "Buddy, I served 25 years, and the biggest patriots I knew were arguing over whether orders to storm the Capitol would be legal or not." The guy got quiet real quick. The military isn't some monolith of bootlicking sycophants. We have rules, training, and brains. We also take oaths to the Constitution, not some wannabe dictator. So no, we're not your private army, and no, we don't all watch Fox News in the break room. Story 6. A friend of mine, a fellow vet, was venting the other day. We triggered NATO's Article 5 when we got attacked. They stood by us without hesitation. Now when they need us, we're out here talking about abandoning them? What the hell? And you know what? He's right. Afghanistan wasn't some favor NATO did for us. It was a response to our war. And now the same people who won't shut up about honor and loyalty are fine with throwing our allies under the bus. Man, if hypocrisy were an Olympic sport, we'd be undefeated. Story 7. People love to talk about draining the swamp, but somehow we ended up letting a billionaire build a dam around it and slap a SpaceX logo on top. The dude is literally trying to access our Treasury's payment system, and no one's batting an eye. Meanwhile, veterans are getting nickel and dimed on their benefits, and the government is cutting programs like they're clearing out an attic. I swear, if Musk decided to sell oxygen subscriptions tomorrow, half the country would be out here holding their breath in solidarity. Story 8. My oldest son's father used to say, "In the Army there's no black or white, we're all green." And I believed that. Until I got out and saw how the country was treating my fellow vets, especially trans troops. The same guys who wore the same boots, swore the same oath, and fought the same wars now have to fight for the right to serve? You'd think after 20 years of non-stop combat, we'd stop making enemies out of our own people. But nah, some folks just need someone to hate, even if they bled next to them. Story 9. For 22 years, I served this country. I folded flags at funerals, saluted them at ceremonies, and flew my own outside my house with pride. But the day I saw a bunch of men storming the Capitol, waving that same flag like a weapon, I took mine down. A few months later, my neighbor asked why. I told him, because the people who fly it now don't stand for what I fought for. He told me I was overreacting, but I see it every day, the way patriotism got hijacked, and until we take it back, my flag stays in the closet. Story 10. Sat down for a beer with an old army buddy, and we got to talking about how the hell we got here. He said, "Man, I used to think we were the good guys," and that hit me, because growing up we were always told that America was the shining beacon of democracy, the moral compass of the world. Now I look around and see us propping up billionaires, gutting public services, and throwing a tantrum anytime someone suggests universal health care like it's some radical idea. I don't know, man, maybe we were never the good guys. Story 11. The propaganda machine in this country is something else. I spent most of my military career in Germany, and let me tell you, living there and then coming back here feels like stepping out of reality and into some dystopian fever dream. People here are convinced we've got the best system in the world. Meanwhile, they're getting price gouged on insulin, drowning in debt, and can't even take a sick day without risking their job. But hey, at least we can buy a giant TV on Black Friday, right? That's real freedom. Story 12. Got a cousin who still flies his Trump flag next to his American flag like they're part of the same set. The man never served a day in his life, but somehow he thinks I'm the traitor for not supporting his guy. I told him, "You ever read the oath I took? It says all enemies, foreign and domestic." He just laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Story 13. I don't recognize this country anymore. It's not just the politics. It's the whole damn attitude shift. People used to care about their neighbors, used to have some sense of collective responsibility. Now it's every man for himself, and if you can't afford health care, well, guess you should have been born rich. When I enlisted, I thought I was defending American values. Turns out, I was just defending the right for corporations to squeeze the last drop out of us before tossing us aside. Story 14. I see these guys online talking about how much they love America, but the second you mention actually taking care of its people, affordable health care, education, veterans benefits, they start foaming at the mouth about socialism. Bro, if the VA, Medicare, and public roads are socialism, then you've been using it your whole damn life. The cognitive dissonance is off the charts. Story 15. My dad was in Vietnam and I was in Iraq. We used to sit on the porch and drink, just shaking our heads at the way people worship these politicians like gods. My dad always said, "It's not the man, it's the system." And yet, here we are, watching half the country act like some billionaire con man is their personal savior. Meanwhile, veterans are out here fighting to get basic health care while he's figuring out how to dodge taxes on his 9th mansion. Story 16. You know what kills me? We pay more in taxes and insurance than people in countries with universal health care, and we still don't have guaranteed coverage. I was stationed in Europe for a while, and let me tell you, the difference is night and day. People there aren't terrified of going bankrupt because they got sick. Here, one bad accident, and you're starting a GoFundMe. But sure, let's keep pretending we're #1. Story 17. Ever notice how the loudest patriots are the ones who never served? I was at a bar a while back when some guy started going off about how the military is going to rise up for Trump. I asked him, "You serve?" He puffed up his chest. "I was gonna, but..." I cut him off. "You weren't. Shut up." I have zero patience for the "I was gonna enlist" crowd. You either did or you didn't. And if you didn't, maybe don't act like you're the voice of the troops. Story 18. I don't get how some people still think Trump respects the military. The dude dodged the draft, insulted Gold Star families, called POWs losers, and openly said he didn't want wounded vets at his parade. Meanwhile, I got friends who served 3, 4 tours, came back broken, and are still fighting the VA for help. But sure, tell me again how he loves the troops. Story 19. Man, I was hopeful when I enlisted. It was around the time Don't Ask, Don't Tell was going away, and I really thought we were moving forward as a country. Now, feels like we're sprinting backward. We got people openly waving Nazi flags in the streets, and the government is more worried about banning books than making sure kids don't go hungry. I swore an oath to defend the Constitution, but some days, I wonder if the Constitution can even defend itself anymore. Story 20. There's something real unsettling about how much the military relies on Starlink now. My spouse is Navy. And yeah, it's nice that some of the ships have Wi-Fi now, but when one unelected billionaire has that much control over military communications, that's a massive problem. What happens when he decides he doesn't like what we're doing? What happens when he just turns it off? No single person should have that kind of power, especially not a guy who throws tantrums on Twitter. Story 21. I'll never understand how some of these rural voters keep supporting the people who want to gut their services. RFK Jr. wants to shut down their hospitals and replace doctors with AI, and they're still out here voting red. You think an AI nurse is going to set your broken leg, Bob? Good luck with that. Story 22. A buddy of mine said the other day, Trump is speedrunning civil unrest so he can declare martial law. And honestly, I can't even argue. He's doing everything he can to destabilize the country, and the people cheering him on are the ones who are going to suffer the most for it. I took an oath to protect the Constitution, but it turns out a lot of people didn't actually read past the first sentence. Story 23. Some people really believe the military is full of MAGA fanatics, and that's just not the case. The guys I served with? We spent more time debating whether we could legally refuse orders than we did talking about politics. And trust me, nobody I knew was signing up to be this dude's personal stormtroopers. But you know who would? The I was gonna enlist crowd. Those guys are dangerous. Story 24. I'll be honest. I've stopped planning for retirement. My pension, my 401k, I'm not banking on any of it. Feels like the whole country is circling the drain, and the people in charge are too busy lining their pockets to care. I've worked with allies around the world, stood beside them, fought beside them. And now, I'm ashamed thinking about how we've abandoned them, or worse, how we might turn against them next. Story 25. I was in a grocery store the other day, wearing my old unit hoodie, when some guy walks up to me and says, "Thank you for your service." I nodded, said, "Appreciate it." Then he follows up with, "Bet you're glad we finally have a real president again." I sighed. "Here we go." "Oh yeah?" I asked. "You think a real president dodges the draft, calls POWs losers, and wants to gut the VA?" His smile faded real quick. "Well, Biden's bad too." I laughed. "Sure, man. But at least he doesn't want to replace my pension with a coupon for a free Big Mac." Story 26. I keep seeing guys who never served talking about how veterans are all conservative and ready to take the country back. Buddy, who told you that? Most of the vets I know are just trying to get the VA to answer the damn phone. We're not gearing up for some grand uprising. We're trying to make sure our knees don't give out on the way to the fridge. If you think the military is full of guys just waiting for a dictator, you've never been in a room full of enlisted guys trying to fill out a travel voucher. Story 27. Remember when the military reminded everyone that we never swore an oath to the government, just the Constitution? That memo aged like fine wine. I served with guys from all over, left, right, middle, but the one thing we all agreed on? If someone tells you to go against the Constitution, you don't follow that order. I don't care how many flags you wave, how many bald eagles you put on your truck. If you're out here cheering for authoritarianism, you're the enemy we were trained to fight. Story 28. Some people seem real excited about the idea of a second civil war, like it's going to be Red Dawn and they'll be out there leading the charge. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here like, bro, you get winded walking up the stairs. You think you're going to take on trained soldiers when you can't even handle a mild leg cramp? The guys I served with? Real military? We don't want this. Because we know who suffers in a war. It ain't the billionaires or the politicians, it's the rest of us. Story 29. I was stationed in Europe for a few years, and it was eye-opening. Seeing how they live compared to us? Man. They've got health care that doesn't bankrupt them, public transit that actually works, and paid vacation that isn't just a dream. Then I came back to the States, and people acted like I was describing Narnia. Free health care? Sounds like communism. No, dude, it sounds like not dying because you couldn't afford a doctor. Story 30. Every time I hear some guy say, "If you don't like America, leave," I just have to laugh. Bro, I've been other places. I know what's out there. You ever notice the loudest "love it or leave it" guys are the ones who've never set foot outside their county, let alone the country? I'd love to see some of these guys in Europe trying to explain why paying $5,000 for an ambulance ride is just the price of freedom. Story 31. Man, it's wild watching people defend billionaires like their lives depend on it. Musk is a genius. He deserves his wealth. Meanwhile, the dude is out here trying to take control of the U.S. Treasury's payment system, and no one seems concerned. The same people who screamed about government overreach when they had to wear a mask are totally fine with one unelected billionaire deciding who gets paid and who doesn't. At this point, I'm convinced some folks would happily lick boots if they were sold as freedom-flavored. Story 32. I was at the VA the other day, waiting for my appointment, and overheard some older vets talking. One guy was complaining about woke politics in the military. Back in my day, we didn't have all this nonsense. The other guy just looked at him and said, "Back in your day, we were still segregated. Maybe chill out." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. The funniest part? The guy who shut him down was wearing a Vietnam vet hat. The old heads who actually served through some shit tend to be the realest ones. Story 33. Every election cycle, I hear politicians talk about how much they support the troops. But when it comes time to actually do something, fund the VA, protect pensions, make sure we're not getting screwed on benefits, they suddenly go silent. Funny how that works. Supporting the troops means more than standing up at a rally and clapping for 5 seconds. If you're more concerned about banning books than making sure veterans get health care, you don't support shit. Story 34. I took my flag down a few years ago. It used to stand for something to me. Now, feels like it's been hijacked by people who think patriotism means blind loyalty to one man instead of the country. Some guy asked me why I don't fly it anymore. I told him, because it's not your symbol. It belongs to all of us. And I'll put it back up when it feels like it again. Until then, it stays in the garage. Story 35. I was grabbing a coffee the other day wearing an old army hoodie, when some guy sits next to me and starts talking about how the military is full of real patriots who are ready to fight for Trump. I took a sip, looked at him and said, "Brother, I was in for over a decade, and let me tell you, most of us were just trying to figure out what base had the best chow hall. Ain't nobody trying to start a civil war for some rich dude who wouldn't even let us park on his golf course." He didn't say much after that. Story 36. I'll never understand how people keep defending politicians who are actively trying to screw them over. RFK is out here talking about shutting down rural hospitals, replacing nurses with AI, and these same folks are still voting for him. Like, do you want to die from a preventable disease because ChatGPT misdiagnosed you? You think some AI nurse is going to hold your hand while you flatline? Good luck with that. Story 37. Every time I hear someone say, "Thank you for your service," I have to stop myself from responding, "You're welcome, now go vote for people who actually fund the VA." Because I swear the same folks who cry about how much they love the troops also vote for politicians who nickel and dime veterans like we're some sort of expense they're trying to write off. If you support billionaires dodging taxes but complain about vets getting benefits, you don't actually support the troops, you just like the aesthetic. Story 38. Man, watching NATO get thrown under the bus makes my blood boil. Our allies had our backs after 9/11s. They didn't hesitate. We invoked Article 5 and they stood with us. And now we've got a bunch of clowns in charge acting like we don't owe them the same loyalty. It's embarrassing. America used to be about alliances, about standing for something. Now it's about which billionaire gets the best tax cut. Hell of a decline. Story 39. People who have never served love to act like the military is one big conservative frat house. Newsflash, the guys I served with were some of the most diverse, opinionated, and politically split people I've ever met. Sure, you've got your Fox News crowd, but you also have guys who've seen what socialized healthcare looks like in other countries and are pissed we don't have it. You've got enlisted folks who grew up poor and know the system is rigged. It's not the MAGA cult people think it is. Story 40. I remember back when we used to look at places like Russia and North Korea and say, man, glad we don't live in a propaganda state like that. Then I came back home and realized, yeah, we kinda do. The only difference is our propaganda comes with better production value and corporate sponsorship. Half this country thinks freedom means the ability to go bankrupt from medical debt while billionaires launch themselves into space. They've been sold a dream that only works if they never wake up. Story 41. Had an old buddy text me the other day, said he was thinking of taking the flag down from his house. He told me, man, I don't want people thinking I'm one of them. And I knew exactly what he meant. It sucks that it's come to this, that people like us, who actually served, feel like we have to distance ourselves from the same flag we fought for. But until it stops being a symbol for blind nationalism instead of actual patriotism, mine stays in the closet. Story 42. You ever notice how the guys screaming the loudest about protecting the Constitution have never actually read it? I had some dude try to tell me the Second Amendment gave him the right to overthrow the government. I said, you know we also swore an oath to protect against domestic enemies, right? He blinked, got real quiet, and changed the subject. They never actually think about what they're saying. They just repeat whatever they heard on Facebook that morning. Story 43. Musk is out here trying to get control of the U.S. Treasury's payment system, and the same people who lost their minds over government overreach don't seem to care. You worried about the government having too much power, but you're cool with one billionaire deciding who gets paid. That's the thing about these anti-government types. They don't actually want less control. They just want different people in control. Ones who look out for them and screw everyone else. Story 44. I don't get how people don't see the pattern. Every time a politician says they support the troops, my first question is, okay, so how are you treating the actual troops? Are you funding the VA? Are you making sure veterans get housing? Are you keeping us out of pointless wars? Or are you just using us as a prop at your rally before gutting our benefits? If your idea of supporting the military is just clapping at a football game, keep it. Story 45. Had a younger guy ask me the other day if I'd enlist again if I was 18 today. I laughed. Not a chance. Not because I don't love my country, but because this ain't the country I signed up to defend. When I joined, I believed in what we were doing. Now I'd be fighting for billionaires and politicians who don't give a damn about me. I'd be sent off to die for contracts and headlines, not freedom. No thanks. Story 46. I don't know if people realize just how bad things are getting. I had a long talk with an old squad mate, and he said something that stuck with me. I'm not worried about the military being on the wrong side. I'm worried about all the rogue cops who think they're military. And he's right. There are way too many dudes with badges who see themselves as soldiers in some imaginary war. That's the real danger, not the military, but the guys who wish they were. Story 47. I used to think things would swing back, that the pendulum would move and we'd level out again. But now I'm not so sure. Feels like we're speeding toward something bad and the people in charge are either too stupid or too selfish to stop it. I spent years defending this country. But lately I've been asking myself, from what? Because the biggest threat isn't overseas. It's right here,